ready to dive into some Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Her new album, Mayhem, I gotta say. It's pretty wild. We're going deep today, and we've got these two sources that are just amazing. First, she did this really intense interview with Zane Lowe, for Apple Music.
Yeah.
And they recorded it in this dive bar on the Lower East Side, like a place that was super important to her when she was starting out.
Oh, wow.
And then, to mix things up, we've got this Spotify thing, a little monster press conference, they called it.
Okay.
She's answering questions from a room full of, her biggest fans.
It is a pretty cool contrast, to hear her reflecting on her journey in a place that obviously means a lot to her.
Right.
And then seeing how it all connects with the fans. It's
Yeah.
like two sides of the same coin.
Totally.
Her own evolution.
Yeah.
And how that hits the people who love her music most.
Exactly. We're getting this all-access pass to her creative process, and this bond she has with the little monsters is just, so strong.
For sure.
So let's head back to the beginning, back to those dive bars. She talks about PBR fueling the scene, this amazing sense of community. It wasn't just about the music,
Yeah.
It was about finding your people, celebrating, what makes you different.
What's really interesting is how she keeps going back to that community idea.
Huh.
It's like those early days on the Lower East Side, they shaped her whole approach to art. Creativity needs those people around you, supporting you, challenging you. You know what I mean?
Right.
You see it in how she works with other artists and how she is with her fans.
It wasn't just some phase she went through, right?
Mm.
It's like that DIY, gritty energy. It's everything she does,
Yeah.
even now. And speaking of transformation, can we talk about how Lady Gaga was born? What a name.
Yeah.
And it all happened in her little apartment on Stanton Street, blasting Queen, getting inspired by Radio Gaga.
It's so much more than a name, though.
Yeah.
Think about it. Stefani Germanotta becomes Lady Gaga. It's like a statement, right?
Yeah.
This is who I am. I'm not afraid to be bold, to be different.
Yeah.
She was drawing from club kid culture. Artists like Lady Starlite, who weren't afraid to create these huge personas. It was about taking control, expressing herself on her own terms.
It's almost like she made this alter ego, and it let her just unleash her full creative potential.
Right.
But then comes the fame, right? Global superstardom.
Yeah.
And she admits that being Lady Gaga is amazing, but it's got its downsides.
Sure.
There's this part where she talks about feeling pressure to be what people expected, and it actually made her feel disconnected from her music for a while.
That's something so many artists go through, especially when they hit that level of fame.
Yeah.
It's like this balancing act, staying true to yourself versus what the industry and the public want.
Right.
Gaga talks about feeling objectified,
Right.
people cared more about the spectacle than the music. It really shows how tough it can be to deal with that scrutiny and still be creatively authentic.
It's like she had to fight to get her voice back, to find that joy in making music for herself, not just for everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's where Mayhem comes in. She calls it a return to her core, this fusion of who she is on stage and who she is behind closed doors.
What's interesting about Mayhem is that it's not just one genre. You hear 90s grunge classic songwriting,
Right.
but it's not like a throwback album.
Yeah.
It's like she's taken all these parts of herself, the rage, the vulnerability, the joy,
Oh.
and she's woven them together into something totally unique.
And speaking of rage, there's this song, Perfect Celebrity. She says it's the angriest song she's ever written. It sounds like she's really grappling with what it means to be famous,
It seems like she's facing fame head on with that song.
Yeah.
Acknowledging the anger, the frustration that comes with being in the spotlight.
Yeah.
She's not hiding from the negative stuff, and I think that's why it hits people so hard.
It's wrong, right?
It's raw, it's honest, and it speaks to this feeling we all have, like being trapped by expectations even when you've achieved what most people dream of.
It's like a warning about the price of fame. But she's not saying she regrets any of it,
Right.
She obviously loves being Lady Gaga.
Yeah,
It's more like she's acknowledging everything, the good and the bad, the joy and the pain.
exactly. And that seems to run through the whole album. She's not just celebrating the highs, she's exploring the lows too, those messy, chaotic parts of herself. And I think that's what makes Mayhem so captivating. It's like a brutally honest self-portrait of an artist who's still growing, still figuring things out, even after everything she's done.
It's like she's saying, this is me, flaws and all. This is what it feels like to be Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
And you know what else is really cool? She talks about how much her partner, Michael, has influenced her, both personally and creatively. It sounds like he's helped her find a healthier balance between life and art, something so many artists struggle with.
You can hear his influence in the music, especially in that song Blade of Grass.
Oh, yeah.
It's this beautiful song, really tender. It was inspired by a conversation they had in their backyard.
Oh.
Gaga tells the story about how Michael asked her how he should propose someday. And she told him, just take a blade of grass and wrap it around her finger. That simple image turned into this whole song about love, loss, the beauty of everyday moments.
It's like she's found peace and grounding in her relationship with Michael, and it's let her tap into a different part of her creativity.
Makes you wonder if the album would have been different without him. You know, it's like he's helped her unlock this new level of vulnerability and intimacy in her music. And that really connects with people.
Yeah.
It's like we're seeing the heart of who she is, not just the persona she shows the world.
Like we're going beyond the spectacle and getting to know Stefani, the woman behind the Lady Gaga mask. And speaking of connections, she keeps talking about community, how important it's been for her whole career. It's like those early days on the Lower East Side, they gave her this deep appreciation for human connection, and she's never let go of that.
So true. And you can really feel that community in the Little Monster press conference.
Yeah.
The way Gaga interacts with them, there's just this huge mutual respect and affection.
Right.
It's not just a one-way thing.
Totally. It's like they're all in this together, you know, navigating the mayhem of life, and Lady Gaga's like their guide.
Yeah.
And speaking of the press conference, there were some really interesting questions from the fans.
Oh, yeah.
One of them asked, if Mayhem was a character, who would it be?
Oh, I love that question.
Right out.
What'd she say?
She said it would be the woman she's known for the past 20 years, which is such a powerful statement.
It is.
It's like she's saying, you know, this album is everything she's been through.
Yeah.
All those different versions of herself over time.
Right.
It's Stefani and Lady Gaga, the public and the private, all rolled into one.
Wow.
It gives me chills. It's like she's finally letting us see everything, the real her, messy, beautiful, complicated.
Yeah.
And speaking of messy and beautiful, remember how we talked about Perfect Celebrity being that raw, angry song about fame? Well, get this. That was actually the working title for the whole album at one point.
You know, it makes sense when you think about it. That song really gets into that dark side of fame, feeling trapped, not being able to be yourself.
Right.
It's like she was so deep in those feelings that it almost took over the whole project.
But then she realized that, like, limiting the album to that one idea, that one emotion, wouldn't be true to all the mayhem inside her, you know?
Yeah.
It's like she had to embrace all those different parts of herself to make something authentic.
And it's cool how she ties that back to the 90s grunge scene.
Yeah.
She talked about feeling connected to that time, the music, the emotions. She even mentioned that Perfect Celebrity was influenced by The Cure.
Wow.
It adds this whole other layer to the song.
Right. Suddenly you hear those darker, more introspective Cure vibes in Perfect Celebrity, and it, like, changes how you hear it.
It does.
It's like those influences are there, under the surface, even if you don't notice them at first.
That's what makes her music so fun to unpack, right?
Yeah.
All these different layers, hidden meanings, influences, you find more every time you listen.
And speaking of hidden gems, did you know there's this other electro-grunge track? It's called See Stop of the High. It's even more intense than Perfect Celebrity.
No way.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's only on this special edition of the album. You got to go to her website to get it.
Oh, wow. So it's like a secret track for the hardcore fans.
Exactly. Okay, so we can't talk about Lady Gaga without mentioning her collaborations. Remember Telephone with Beyonce?
Oh, of course.
Well, at the press conference, the Little Monsters were dying to know if there would ever be a Telephone Part 2.
Oh, I bet. It's like the dream sequel.
Right. And you know what? She didn't say no.
Really?
Yeah, she was being kind of coy, but she definitely hinted that it might happen someday.
I can just imagine that room going crazy when she said that.
Oh, I know, right?
Speaking of crazy, there's another track on Mayhem that got the fans talking. Beast. They were picking up on this, like, unresolved energy. Like, there's a whole story behind it that we're just getting a glimpse of.
Yeah, it definitely draws you in. She described it as a revenge record,
Yeah.
even though she admitted the lyrics don't really say that.
Oh, interesting.
She's talked about the energy coming from, like, these deep, unresolved emotions.
Wow.
And then she connected it to her relationship with Michael and her, you know, her stage persona, Lady Gaga. It's like Beast represents this raw power she has when she performs. Like she's tapping into something primal, untamed.
That's so interesting. You know, it makes you think about all the masks we wear, the different sides of ourselves we show to the world.
Right.
Maybe Beast is Gaga's way of acknowledging that darker, more instinctual part of herself, the part that doesn't always fit the Lady Gaga image.
It's like she's saying, I'm not just this pop icon, this perfect persona. I'm this wild creature, too, with all this rage and passion just under the surface.
I love that.
And you know what else she talked about that I thought was really important?
What's that?
The shadow side of fame, especially the challenges of being a woman in the music industry.
Yeah.
She got really real about the criticism women face, even when they're at the top of their game.
It's something we need to talk about more.
Totally.
She talked about the pressure to look and act a certain way,
Right.
the double standards, the misogyny that's still there in the industry.
It's a reminder that even with all her success, Gaga's dealt with those same battles that so many other women face.
Yeah, it's true.
But she doesn't let it shut her up. She calls out the injustice, uses her platform to speak truth to power.
Right.
And ultimately, she champions, the strength and resilience of women.
And it's not just gender equality.
Yeah.
She's also a huge advocate for the LGBTQ plus community.
Right.
Especially trans individuals who face so much discrimination and violence.
It's true.
Her message is clear. Everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are.
It's so inspiring to see her using her voice to amplify the voices of those communities.
Yeah.
She doesn't shy away from tough conversations, even if it makes people uncomfortable.
That's what sets her apart. She's not just an entertainer.
Right.
She's an activist, a role model, someone who's actually using her platform to make a difference.
And I think that's why her fans connect with her so deeply.
Yeah.
They see her as someone who gets it, who fights for them, who inspires them to be themselves.
It goes back to that community feeling. It's like she's made this space where people feel seen and heard,
Yeah.
empowered to be who they are, no judgment.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. And speaking of empowerment, let's talk about the overall arc of Mayhem.
Okay.
Gaga talked about the album starting in a dark place with Vanish Into You,
Yeah.
but it ends more hopefully with Die With a Smile.
It's like a journey through the darkness and into the light, which
Yeah.
is something we can all relate to.
Yeah, we all have those times of struggle, uncertainty,
Right.
but there's always hope, always something to look forward to.
And I think that's what Gaga is trying to say with this album. She's not pretending life is easy, but she's reminding us that even in the chaos, there's beauty, connection, a reason to keep going.
Absolutely.
And remember those Gothic dreams she talked about?
Yeah.
Those dark, vivid visions that inspired the album. It's like she's letting us into her subconscious,
Yeah.
letting us experience the full range of her creativity.
Right.
The light and the shadow, the beautiful and the grotesque.
And it's so cool how those dreams tie into real life,
Yeah.
Remember Blade of Grass?
Yeah.
She talked about that same backyard where she and Michael talked about the proposal.
Uh-huh.
That was also where she lost her friend Sonia.
Oh, wow.
It's like those blades of grass became this symbol of how life has these two sides,
Right.
The joy and the pain, the growth and the loss, all mixed together.
It's like she's saying, even in the dark times, there's still beauty. There's still a reason to keep growing. And listening to Gaga talk about how she creates, it's so inspiring. She's not afraid to let her emotions go wild, explore those dark parts of her mind, and make art that's deeply personal, but everyone can relate to.
It's what makes a true artist, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to tap into something real, authentic, and turn it into something that touches other people so deeply.
Right. And it's not just about expressing her own feelings. It's about making a space where her fans feel seen, heard, understood.
Exactly.
And, speaking of inspiration, she said some really beautiful things about the people who have mentored her along the way.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even the most successful artists need guidance, need support.
Right.
She talked about Lady Starlite being her biggest mentor, someone who helped her shape her early performances, develop her style.
Wow.
And then there's the legendary Tony Bennett, whose advice, stick with quality, has obviously stuck with her.
It's like having those wise people in your life who believe in you, who push you, and remind you not to compromise.
Yeah.
And Gaga talked about being inspired by musical giants like Bruce Springsteen, Stevie Wonder, Prince. They all had this artistry, this soulfulness that she wants to achieve.
You can definitely hear their influence, but it's not about copying.
Right.
It's about taking those inspirations and making them her own. It's like she's building on what they did, adding her voice to the story of music and art.
And we can't forget New York City when we're talking about Gaga's inspiration. She talked about how living on the Lower East Side, around all those artists and musicians, it was so important for her vision.
That time was huge for her.
Yeah.
That's where she honed her craft, tried out different personas, found a community that accepted her unique style. It's almost like the city itself inspired her, you
Let's
know?
see that.
Feeding her creativity, pushing her to take chances.
And it's interesting how that energy comes full circle with Zombie Boy from Mayhem.
Yeah.
She said it's the song that sounds most like that era, you know?
Yeah.
Raw, chaotic, the spirit of the Lower East Side.
It reminds us that even as artists change and try new things, those early influences are still a part of them.
It's like those experiences are a part of who they are, shaping their view, affecting their art, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah.
It's like coming home, going back to your roots and seeing the journey that brought you here.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of journeys, I think we've hit on what makes Lady Gaga so special. It's her relationship with her fans, the little monsters.
For sure.
It's more than just artist and fan. You know.
Absolutely.
It's a real community built on love, respect, understanding.
You could feel it in the Spotify press conference.
Yeah.
Gaga really values what her fans think.
Yeah.
She listened to their questions, answered honestly, openly, even joked with them like they were old friends.
She seemed genuinely moved by their stories, like when one fan talked about how Gaga's music helped them find the drag community.
Wow.
It's moments like that that show how much artists can impact their fans' lives.
Yeah.
It's not just entertainment. It's about belonging, empowerment, hope.
And on the flip side, Gaga talked about how she misses the closeness of those early days. You know, hanging out with fans after shows, getting to know them.
Right.
It's like she knows that fame can create distance.
Even as it makes the connection bigger in other ways.
Right.
But what I admire is that she's really trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
The press conference is proof of that. It's a way for her to connect more personally, answer questions, create a space for real conversation.
It shows how genuine she is, her desire to connect with people, something that's easy to lose, and the craziness of being a superstar.
So after spending this time with Lady Gaga through her music, her words, what do you think it all means?
I think Gaga's journey shows us the power of being yourself, of navigating the tough parts of fame and staying true to your art.
Right.
But it's also about community, finding your people, using your platform to lift others up, empower them.
It's a reminder that even in the chaos, there's beauty. There's a reason to keep creating, keep connecting, keep fighting for what you believe in.
And, you know, maybe exploring Gaga's Mayhem will inspire you to embrace your own chaos. Find your voice, create something beautiful and meaningful.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Lady Gaga's Mayhem. And until next time, keep searching for the beauty in the mayhem.